A hearty welcome to all of you gathered here for the 59th Foundation Day of Regional Institute of Education, NCERT, Mysuru. I also welcome all those who are with us virtually. We have with us as the chief guest of the day, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, IAS, from Foundation for Democratic Reforms, Hyderabad, who will join us virtually and deliver the Sardar Panikkar Memorial Lecture. We are fortunate also to have with us Professor Sridhar Srivastava, Director NCERT, and the chairperson for today's session, who will join us virtually. We have with us our principal, Professor Y. Shrikant, Professor G.V. Gopal, Dean of Instruction, and Professor C. Padmaja, Head DEE, RIE Mysuru. Before we begin the proceedings of this session, we call upon our students for rendering an invocation song and pray for the blessings of the Almighty.
शिवैति ब्रह्मेति वेदान्तिनः यं शैवाः समुपासते शिवैति ब्रह्मेति वेदान्तिनः बौद्धाः बुद्धैति प्रमाणपटवाः कर्तेति नैयायिकाः अर्हन्नित्यता जैनशासनरताः कर्मेति मीमांसकाः क्रैस्ताः क्रिस्त इति क्रियापररताः महम्मदाः सोऽयं वो विदधातु वाञ्छितफलं त्रैलोक्यनाथो हरिः.
Thank you. Lord Buddha once said, if you light a lamp for someone else, it will brighten your path too. Light symbolizes knowledge and purity. It dispels darkness. I request the dignitaries on the dais to kindly light the lamp and formally inaugurate the session. I also request all of you to kindly pay floral tributes to Sardar Panikkar's portrait. I thank all the dignitaries. I now request Professor G.V. Gopal, Dean of Instructions, RIE Mysuru, to welcome the gathering.
A warm good morning to all who assembled here for celebrating the 59th Foundation Day celebrations of RIE Mysuru and erstwhile Regional College of Education, Mysuru. I take this opportunity to welcome Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, IAS, for delivering the Sardar Panikkar Memorial Lecture today. And I also take this opportunity to welcome Professor Sridhar Srivastava, Director NCERT, New Delhi, to act as chairperson of the session. And now I call upon Professor Y. Srikant, Principal, and staff and students of RIE Mysuru for this function. And Professor Y. Srikant will also introduce the chief guest. And I also invite Professor C. Padmaja, Head DE, for this function. And without saying anything, all the students and the staff of DMS and RIE, those who are here and those who are virtually connected, I welcome all for you for this function. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. I wish to call upon our respected principal, Professor Y. Srikant, to make his introductory remarks on Sardar Panikkar Memorial Lecture and also to introduce the guests.
Good morning, everyone. Respected Professor Sridhar Srivastava, Director NCERT, respected Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, IAS, my dear colleagues, students and staff, wish you all a very happy 59th Foundation Day of the Regional Institute of Education, Mysuru. Every year, as you are all aware, that we celebrate this particular day in commemoration of the contribution made by Sardar Panikkar, whose name is Kavalam Madhavan Panikkar, who was an Indian statesman and diplomat. And in his memory, we celebrate this Foundation Day. He was a professor, a newspaper editor, historian and novelist, and he has made significant contribution not only to the University of Mysuru, to which he was Vice Chancellor, but also at national and international level. Panikkar represented the country at the 1947 session of the UN General Assembly. He was appointed a member of the States Reorganization Committee set up in 1953. He also served as Vice Chancellor of the University of Kashmir. He was a profound scholar, a brilliant intellectual, and a fascinating conversationalist. The Regional Institute of Education, the then Regional College of Education, Mysuru, instituted the Sardar Panikkar Memorial Lecture series in memory of the valuable services rendered by the late Sardar Panikkar for the development of education in India and of the deep interest he had shown as Vice Chancellor of the Mysuru University in the growth of Regional College of Education, Mysuru. I also welcome Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan. He is physician by training and also a civil servant of 1980 batch. He has served for 16 years and has shown deep interest in serving the masses by reaching out to them at grassroots level. And that is how he started Lok Satta in 1996. It is a people's movement for governance and political reforms, this Lok Satta, and it has emerged as the largest civil society in its initiative in fighting in fighting the cause of corruption and also fighting for ensuring democratic reforms in the country. In fact, when I think of Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, I always remember Paulo Freire's contribution and what he said. He said that we should not just simply confine to thought, and thought should lead to reflection, and this reflection should also not be a silent one. It should lead to action. And Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan is an embodiment of this particular thinking, that they all should go together, thought, reflection and action. And that is why very uniquely we have him here, who has not only contributed in the area of education, but also has made a rigorous attempt to bring about socio-economic change in the country. And he has been successful in it in his own way, especially in his contribution towards RTI and also administrative reforms, and his fight against corruption, and also the populistic schemes and many others. I also welcome Professor Sridhar Srivastava, who has been the director. He's a professor in statistics, and I have a long association when I was working with him in the same department. He's a kind and gentle person and has readily accepted, in spite of his busy schedule, to be with us today. And on this Foundation Day, we are also recognizing the contribution made by some of the faculty, apart from many others, who have immensely rendered their services in spite of the fact that the world is seized with the problem of the pandemic, that is Corona, and not on a single day they refuse to come, contribute, work for the institution. So I really appreciate their effort. Professor Gopal, the Dean of Instruction, Professor Rama, the Head of the Department of Education, Professor Padmaja, Department of Extension, Head of Department of Extension Education, Professor V.S. Prasad, Head of Science and Mathematics, Dr. V. Prasad, Head of Social Science and Languages. So they're all going to be felicitated during this particular Foundation Day. I thank you very much, and I also would like to end with the note that Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, he himself called me and said that I would like to have more of interaction than just speaking to the students. I believe that this will be a very interesting and lively session, and not just delivering of the speech as it happens otherwise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. We humbly request our distinguished chief guest, Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, to deliver the Sardar Panikkar Memorial Lecture on Education for Social Transformation. Over to you, sir.
Namaskar, sir. Thank you very much for being with us. We welcome you. Thank you, sir. Today with us, Professor Sridhar Srivastava, the Director NCERT is there, and also the staff, students, faculty of RIE Mysuru are there, both online and offline, sir. Thank you very much. And now we request you to please deliver the lecture and followed by interaction. And I have already conveyed to our students that there will be a lot of interaction and very brief lecture of about 15 to 20 minutes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Professor Srikanth. My apologies to all of you. I wish I had a chance to listen to direct NCERT, but there was another online meeting. No matter how hard you try, sometimes some of the organizers find it difficult to conclude the schedule in time. My apologies for that. First of all, I'm delighted to be with you all on the 59th Foundation Day celebration of this wonderful organization. NCERT and the regional centers have been playing a phenomenal role in a country which is underserved in the field of education. I am one of the beneficiaries of NCERT, my understanding of Indian history and culture and quite a few things was based on NCERT books. They are the go-to sources of knowledge for every young Indian who wants to understand a bit about his or her country and the world today. And in a milieu of mediocrity, to maintain the quality of excellence and to pursue that unceasingly is a remarkable thing, and I salute NCERT and its sister institutions all over the country. I am truly honored to be able to interact with you in the name of Sardar Panikkar. Though it's not really a formal, serious lecture, it's more an interaction. In many ways, Panikkar's life is an example of what went right in the pre-independence era and what we need to now rediscover in today's India. Panikkar was a product of colonial India. His education essentially was in the first 2 decades of 20th century. But despite primitive conditions, low level of technology, economic inadequacies in our society, poor infrastructure, inadequate spending on education, many people, Panikkar being a prime example, they could fulfill their potential in that system. There are many among you and your parents who have gone to village schools. I myself went to a village school. I studied in Telugu medium, in a Panchayat school, what we call Panchayat Samiti Primary School and Zilla Parishad High School. There are tens of thousands of us, of our generation who went to those schools. They fulfilled their potential. They are now all over the world. They played a significant role in whatever sector or field they have chosen, and they made a contribution which is lasting. Panikkar belonged to that wonderful class of people. The second great thing about Panikkar is he was a polymath. He was not limited to a certain field. He was a philosopher, statesman, thinker, diplomat, educationist. It's very rare to find such exceptional people making an impact on a variety of fields. The third thing that occurs to me is Panikkar, if I remember myself reading even the small little 70-page book of Panikkar, that gives you a deep understanding of what India's history is about. The ability to synthesize the various strands of a very complex society and tortuous history. And build an India transcending caste, region, religion, language, and political party. Create a world of humanism. Build a framework of values based on humanism. A focus on the future without losing the thread of the past. And of course, his contribution to the states reorganization in India is well known. My state, or the Telugu states, are among the forefront of the struggle for linguistic reorganization of states, and it was the States Reorganization Commission in which Panikkar played an important role that paved way for that. In a variety of ways, we are all deeply grateful to men like Panikkar and his generation for the legacy they left us, and I pay my humble tribute to that great man on this occasion. Let me make just a few points in no more than about 7 to 8 minutes, and a gathering of this kind doesn't require an elaborate lecture. It's more to open up the possibilities of meaningful discussion. Panikkar and many others of those generations, despite inadequate infrastructure, have flourished. They fulfilled their potential. I think all of us recognize, if we have some awareness of the facts, that 80% of the children of India simply have no opportunity to fulfill their potential. Many surveys and studies indicate about 1% of children of India are comparable to the world standards, the best in the world. About 15 to 20%, while they are falling below the global standards, they can improve with a bit of opportunity. They can improve. But 80% have simply no opportunity. The numbers we spout about literacy figures and other things, they are vastly exaggerated. The basic skills required for people to be able to engage themselves productively as citizens in a modern society, or participate in the productive economic activity in a modern economy, they simply do not exist for most of the people of our country, even today, in 2021. It is particularly shocking and tragic Because our governments actually have not been doing badly in terms of supporting education. Yes, more support is always welcome. We always talk about 6% GDP on education. But in my judgment, spending 4.1% GDP on education is not a bad thing at all. Particularly because a significant number of kids are now in private schools. In most states, 50% of the kids are in private schools. 50% are now, kids in higher education are in private universities and colleges. Therefore, our talking about 6% GDP is not really relevant. It's not so much that the money is a problem. You take Andhra Pradesh and Telangana, the two states together are spending annually 55,000 crores on school education. And there are only 66 lakh children in government schools in Andhra Pradesh and Telangana together. So per child they are spending about 85,000 rupees or so per year. A lot more is welcome. But we cannot say that 85,000 rupees is a small sum of money. Almost every southern state is spending somewhere in the neighborhood of 70, 80, 85,000 rupees per child. If we really take all the expenditure of the government on school education. I am not arguing against infrastructure. I am saying that is not the fundamental constraint. Because society has tremendous passion for education. For millennia, India has had tremendous cultural and historic fascination for educational scholarship. We revere scholars. Our scholars are put on the pedestal, highest level in the country. The kings and the wealth creators only came next. Our parents sacrifice a great deal. We are almost unique in the world where parents live only for their children. This is one issue where we transcend all barriers of caste, region, religion, language. All families in India, there's one common thread. We all want our children to do better than us. We are willing to pay any price, postpone all our wants in order to fulfill their wants and their needs. Even the poorest parents in India are willing to spend money out of pocket, disproportionate to their income, to give their children a head start. A rickshaw puller, a vegetable vendor, an auto driver. You cannot ask for more from the society, and the kids work very hard. They carry large bundles of books. So it's not the other factors. We don't have to tell people to educate their children. It is the way we are imparting education. I think we have to recognize, while individual teachers and educators and institutions like NCERT have done spectacular work, as a society, India has failed spectacularly in education. And if that is not transformed, social, economic and political transformation of India is not possible. That transformation is going to be easy because A, the demand side is very strong, and B, already we are deploying significant resources in education, both government and private. Therefore, the key constraints are no longer there. If we just tweak things a little bit, outcomes will be dramatically improved. I am a great optimist. This is in this context that the education policy based on Kasturirangan report that has been released is of great significance in my view. I have gone through it with extreme care, and I have actually played some role in shaping the Kasturirangan report. Actually, I am the first one to interact with the Kasturirangan committee in detail. And also I vetted the draft report, etc. So I know inside out what they have suggested and why. I think the fundamental requirement today is twofold. How do you shift from rote-based learning to conceptual understanding and critical thinking and ability to solve real problems? Apply knowledge for real solutions. The second is, how do you bridge the gap between the rich and the poor in an increasingly technology-driven world? The digital divide, as people call it. There is a link between the two. Let me take the first question first. There are many other issues, but I am trying to focus on the two essential elements required for the future of India. All parents in India want success for their children. I have known gundas and murderers, literally murderers, who want their children to do very well. There is not one crew who wants their children to be bad. It is human nature. Everybody aspires for their children a better future through good education. Everybody therefore wants success. The problem of India is we have neither understood the definition of success, the meaning of success as a society. Therefore we go by ranks and marks, and we have not understood how to test that success, how to measure that success. Our terrible examination system, based on rote learning and mass copying, has created several generations of automatons. Very few of our children are capable of independent thinking and innovation. It was earlier rote learning alone, but in recent years, mass copying. It is not a great secret that in many states there is rampant mass copying. What was earlier an occasional random occurrence, sporadic occurrence, has now become rampant mass copying because of competitive. They are doing it, therefore I have to do it. They are getting those courses, I must get this course. The government is doing, private sector will do. So we have created, reinforced these things, these negative beliefs, and got to the vicious cycle. To me, the central challenge is how do you design a testing system, like for instance PISA. As you all know, I'm sure, the Program for International Students Assessment, PISA, organized by OECD. The last time India participated, the only time India participated, we ranked 72nd and 73rd out of 74 entities surveyed. Thank God there was a country called Kyrgyzstan in that list. They came last, and therefore India narrowly avoided the ignominy of being the last country of the 74 countries surveyed. China was ranked first. Consistently in every survey, China comes somewhere in the top 3 or 5. Singapore, Hong Kong, China, they all rank somewhere at the top. You don't have to be a European and North American country. You don't have to spend billions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars per child. You can make enormous difference even with the current resources of the really important education problem. PISA has told us how terrible our things are. And our own much more crude surveys, like for instance ASA, the first ASA survey, I was along with Montague Singh Ahluwalia, I released the report in Delhi Constitution Club. Since then I've been following very closely what's happening. Year after year they make very depressing reading. This is much less refined tool than PISA. It's simply about can the kid do arithmetic, simple arithmetic. Can the kid do a bit of reading? Even there, a substantial number of our kids are way below what is required for no fault of theirs. And in a large system, when multiple stakeholders there in a federal country, you want to improve it, we have to do a lot of things like teacher training, better textbooks, curriculum, this, that, all sorts of things. But the central issue is how do you measure success? How do you define and measure success? Because once that incentive is altered, everybody in the system, across the board, the educators, the managers, the teachers, the parents, the kids, everybody will alter their behavior because everybody wants success. Provided we understand the meaning of success, we define it well, we measure it well, and we make it a measurement of integrity. Because now we have to add this element always. How do you ensure testing without copying, without cheating? 20 years ago, maybe I would not have said it, you would not have to say it. But today, we have to say that too. But it's not impossible. World over, they are doing it, we can do it. The second part is digital divide. I'll conclude with this and then we'll have interaction. Digital divide. Fantastic technology platforms are coming. One thing that all great educators understand is the two twin problems of imparting education. The first is no matter how well you train teachers, you cannot guarantee the same quality of teaching. The conceptual clarity of the teacher herself and the transfer of that clarity to the kid is not easy. We all know. Among teachers there is tremendous variation. If the kid suffers for want of a good teacher, it's a bit tragic. While teacher is indispensable in the educational process, teacher's deficiency cannot be the reason for the kid's failure to understand. The second part is perhaps even more difficult across the world. In a classroom, all educators understand not every kid is at the same level. There are kids who within 1 month can finish the whole curriculum work of 1 year. They are far ahead of their peers. There are other kids who require special help and attention in order to be able to meet the minimum required standards, minimum levels of learning. Now, if you burden the teacher excessively, it's an impossible task to cater to the needs of everybody from the best to the average. That burden is unsustainable. Either the teacher will be way above the average to meet the demands of the best, or the teacher will bore the very competent and the very gifted students. Therefore, there is a level of mediocrity, the lowest common denominator. These two problems can be overcome by technology efficiently. Apart from peer learning, they themselves in groups, etc. Many people are experimenting, like when they Mahatma Foundation, etc., where the groups are formed and the slightly better kid will actually sit with them and he acts as an instructor, and then he improves his skills and the other kids, they catch up, and the student monitors, the teacher monitors. So that part, technology is a powerful aid in both. Exceptional technology tools are now available, both in non-profit sector and in for-profit sector, to transmit knowledge to every single kid in a very easy way. I feel envious today when I see the tools of technology, from school education to medical education. The kinds of technological tools that are available, they're wonderful. What was so hard to imbibe, to grasp 30, 40, 50 years ago is so easy if only we provide access. Therefore, I think we all must embrace technology, because now India can easily overcome the barriers of technology. When you're spending so much money on education, a bit of restructuring will ensure that everybody has access to technology. Particularly in the cluster concept of the new education policy. Even if each school cannot have access to technology and hardware, the clusters can have access and therefore we can overcome the deficiencies. Those are matters of detail and management. We can do a lot. But if technology is going to be one of the key elements of education of the future, then we must be able to bridge the digital divide, both in terms of access to technology and in terms of creating a culture of using technology for learning. The poorer families necessarily have a great disadvantage there. World over, it's a fact. Not only even in rich countries, they find digital divide is very real. But we have to overcome that. If these two things are done simultaneously, if we deploy technology and the collective energies of the people across the spectrum, education is one area where all Indians are willing to come together to help. Personally, I know of hundreds, maybe thousands of Indians who are willing to do whatever it takes to promote education. Money is not an issue at all. Private sector, public sector, charitable sector, corporate sector, any number of people, if only they see where the money is going, why the money is going to get value to people, to the kids. Money is not a constraint. Imagination is a constraint. The new education policy is one of imagination, one of passion, one based on logic and evidence, past experience. It really gives us a roadmap for an educated India. I'm an optimist. I believe in the next 5 to 10 years, both school education and higher education can be transformed without any additional infusion of resources. More resources are welcome. But if we depend on government putting in several more trillions of rupees, then it's a pipe dream. Because the other sectors which are starved of money, healthcare, we are spending hardly anything. There's a desperate need. So more resources, if we depend on that, it's unlikely to happen. Restructuring, yes. Reallocation, yes. But better utilization and smart strategies are the key to the future. And in this struggle, I know that NCERT has been in the forefront of this. Not only in teacher training, curriculum development, textbooks, and a whole lot of other innovations. And I believe your role and the role of all educators and thinkers of India is going to be extraordinarily important in the next few years. I really believe that we are in an exciting age to improve education. This should have happened 70 years ago, but it's better late than never. It's never too late. I truly believe that we can make a difference in the next few years, and India can be easily somewhere in the top 10 PISA, just to take one yardstick. But more important, our kids can be wealth creators, they can be productive workers, and they can be active citizens, and they can be good human beings through good education. And then the dreams of the freedom fighters and people like Sardar Panikar will be truly realized. I'm grateful to you for this opportunity, and I welcome an interaction. I necessarily made a very brief and very pointed intervention instead of going into a large number of issues related to education for want of time, and you're all experts in the field in any case. So forgive me for my limited discussion, but let's have an interaction. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir, for the wonderful talk and also delineating the issues and challenges that are there before us, and also suggesting the possibilities that are there and also opportunities that we have before us. Now I request our students and faculty to pose clarifications, questions if they have any, so that it could be a very lively interactive session, which we wanted especially on this particular day, because Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan is known for his spontaneity in responding to the questions. Thank you, sir.
Then I'm a fourth year student. I would like to know from you that the Right to Education Act 2009 mandates that there should be 200 days of teaching hours for these teachers, but we see that most of the teachers are delegated additional responsibilities, which hampers their teaching roles. So can you prescribe some alternatives which may be efficient in improving their efficiency and working in their respective
I'll make a
domains?
few sharp comments. I hope you don't mind. Right to Education Act is a well-meant but utterly foolish law. I was one of the architects. I was not personally involved, but I was in the National Advisory Council when this was being done. So I'm not saying it out of any malice. It simply is a bad law. First of all, you don't require education to be declared a fundamental right to impart education. You simply have to impart education. Did anybody stop imparting education? I was prevented from imparting education because it's not a fundamental right. So, more about publicity and gimmickry rather than substance. Second, it focused only on infrastructure all the time, and it's prescriptive, trying to regulate rather than focus on outcomes. There is not one word about outcomes, if I am not mistaken, in the Right to Education Act. Not one word about it. Third, it prescribed a rigid pattern. Whether the number of hours of schooling or you must only go to school. It did not even provide for homeschooling, and the parents are going to dedicate their lives for the kids' education, for instance. Until recent amendments, I think, are brought out. So it gave a very rigid kind of thing. It's prescriptive that you don't know, you don't want to send your children to school. I, the state, know that, and therefore you should do it. Rather than creating conditions to impart the best quality education. Right to Education Act is a failure. After the enrollment has, of course, dramatically gone up, now thanks to Right to Education Act, I believe it's a normal process. Almost everybody is going to school at the primary level initially now in the country. But at the same time, outcomes are dramatically poor. In fact, last 15 years, there's a decline in outcomes, or they're stagnant at best. And two, while the focus of Right to Education Act is essentially the government schools, more money, more infrastructure, more this, more that, what happened over a period of time is that there is actually a migration of children, the flight of children from the government schools to private schools. So to the extent, again, it has been spectacular. One of the rigidities, for instance, is the notion that a primary school should be closest to the people neighborhood and therefore within a certain distance of the households. In this day and age, it's a silly notion. I have seen, and I have placed it before the Andhra Pradesh Assembly, and they were shocked, all my colleague members at the time were shocked when I came out with the data, that there were about 1,000 schools in the then Andhra Pradesh state without a single teacher. There were about a few dozen schools, maybe a few scores of schools, where the teachers outnumber the enrolled pupils. I am not misspeaking. There were more teachers than the pupils enrolled in the schools. If you take the totality of teacher-student ratio, at least in the southern states, it is 1 to 16 or 1 to 16 to 1 to 18. But if you take the detail, the granular detail of what's actually happening, it's a disaster. Why? Apart from bad management, it's bad policy. You require institutionalization of a school, an environment of a school, 5 classrooms for grade 1 to 5, 5 teachers, and an environment for proper monitoring and taking themselves seriously. The moment that disappeared, everything else disappeared. Right to Education Act, instead of understanding that, actually reinforced the old notions. So in many ways, Right to Education Act was a well-meaning bad law. It didn't serve the country well. I know my comments are harsh and some people may take offense, but no, when you want to make short comments and briefly state the case, you have to be sharp. I can say the same thing in 2 hours, no humming and hawing, but that doesn't help us. The fact is, it didn't help the country at all. Now we have to completely rethink on the basis of our past experience, based on evidence and logic, not silly ideological notions, evidence and logic. The purpose of every single child must get quality education without a burden on the parents, economic burden on the parents. So, to that extent, everything must be altered, and there are ways of doing it.
There is no disagreement on this, sir. In fact, NCERT has been focusing on not only the provisions, but also the processes and outcomes. In fact, we conducted the largest survey after the census survey of all the schools in the country. Until 2013 we conducted, and we see that classroom processes are efficiently managed. We help the teachers in this, and also NCERT has come out with the learning outcomes document. You may be aware of that at the elementary level and now at secondary level. So in order to ensure that not only the provisions and processes but also outcomes are realized and align them with the international surveys like PISA, etc. Thank you, sir. Yes, please.
Absolutely. Thankfully, we have these apex institutions doing a great job. Even state councils, I don't know about recent times, but 10-15 years ago I've seen the SCRT in Andhra Pradesh. They were doing a great job, because of your influence. But I don't know to what extent governments are really utilizing it and spreading it across the spectrum. So we are not starting a de novo. We are starting at a fairly high level if you utilize it and spread the knowledge and the practices all over the country.
Yes. Next.
Good afternoon, sir. My name is Veda Vyasa. I am studying 4th year here. I am from Anantapur district, Andhra Pradesh, sir. So I have 2 issues that I would request you to shed upon your light. The first one is, you know that NEP 2020 is being formed, and more recently curriculum framework will be coming upon. And in the view of this, our entire history textbooks are being rewritten, or in the sense they are viewed as an Indian perspective more than the Western sees it. So how do you think, is there any effective or a change in the mindset of the youngsters or in the nation towards seeing our Indian history? That is my first question. The second is, you are the greater promoter of mother tongue teaching in schools, in colleges, sir. I would see you in newspapers and in TV debates coming upon and promoting the mother tongue language. So there is a great struggle going on in our home state Andhra Pradesh for this. Now giving upon this in a national education policy to promote mother tongue even in the higher education, like in engineering, 44% of engineering students opted for teaching in their mother tongue. So, but the problem is that when they go to the corporate sector, there is a different issue facing there. The entire thing is westernized. They want English as a fancy language to speak upon and work. Do you think there will be a problem faced by the students who take this mother tongue as their pride to learn the language or to learn the subject? Thank you.
Whether yes, the first question is about history relating, right? The first part of the question is about history, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Let me attempt to answer that. I'm sure scholars they have better insights and they'll be able to explain to you. But I'm also a keen student of history. I'm not a scholar. I've not studied it academically. I'm a medical doctor by training, but I am a keen student of history in this country. That there have been some deficiencies in our historicity is understandable. After all, India did not even know anything about Ashoka and the Mauryas until 19th century. For 2000 years plus, India had lost a sense of one of our greatest legacies in history. So history always has to be updated, revised, so that we take all the elements that made this grand project of India possible socially and politically and civilizational. To that extent, for instance, if there is a feeling that certain strands of the freedom struggle, anti-colonial struggle, or making of nationalism are not adequately represented in our history textbooks, I have no serious quarrel with that. But to try and do it in a vengeful manner, a revisionist history without regard to the facts and the requirements of Indian society, a complex, federal, diverse Indian society, eclectic Indian society, that will be extremely dangerous in the long term. For our own self-image, our understanding of the nationhood, and it will actually create more divisions than unite us. You know, my sense of history would be, just to give an example, I would be delighted if every kid is taught about the migration of human beings. All of us started off in somewhere in East Africa, probably in Rift Valley in Kenya, some 75,000 years ago. We are all the children of those ancestors, whether North America or Europe or Central Asia or South Asia or Australia, wherever, or Africa. We are all children of those mothers, those small group of ancestors who intrepidly migrated to the rest of the world in various waves of migration. If we understand that anthropology, not merely history of the last few thousand years, but actually understand the history of modern human beings last 75,000, 100,000 years, then I think a lot of our stupidity and prejudice will disappear. So, obviously you have to keep on updating history, but unless there is a larger understanding of what it is to be human, and the historical trends, rather than specific events, it will be a very futile exercise. No? If we divide it to Hindu history, Muslim history, Hindus good, Muslims good, or some other fellow good, your life is wasted. It's much more complicated. So that kind of deep understanding and humanism and anthropological landscape, I believe, must inform our understanding of history. When it comes to language as a medium of instruction, I am a great advocate of, I would not call it mother tongue, but the language that the kid understands. Let's put it very simply. Because the moment you say mother tongue, there are cultural other implications. So to me, it's not an emotional issue. It's not a cultural issue. To me, it's an academic issue. A kid who is not taught concepts in a language that she does not that she understands cannot grasp the concepts. It's not a big issue. It's not a cultural issue. Let's imagine that some great speaker, a great scholar, a Nobel laureate came and addressed us in this gathering. But she came from China. She spoke in Mandarin. It's extraordinary learning. There's no question about it. She spoke in Mandarin. Tell me, how many of you can understand? I can't understand a word. Now, imposing a language on kids that don't understand the language, don't use that language for day-to-day interaction, is exactly like a Mandarin-speaking scholar coming and addressing us in Mandarin. Because we gave cultural and political significance to English as a language, and therefore as a medium of instruction, we are thinking it's a natural thing, it's an unnatural thing. It's an artificial thing. I'm not opposed to English, I think in English. Though I grew up in Telugu, I studied in Telugu medium. Over time, as it happens to many of us, we started thinking in English, therefore English became my language. Today my natural language is English. I use Telugu, but I translate every second my English into Telugu words. Most people don't realize it because I do it instantly. But my thinking is essentially in English, so I'm not opposed to English as a language, or a medium of instruction also. But the issue is not about language, it's about the ability to understand. How can we impose Mandarin on kids that don't understand it? Or Arabic on all Indians? Or French or German or Latin or Spanish or some other language. Supposing you teach all kids in that language, how can they understand? So once we first overcome the cultural issue, we can think much more clearly, think academically. That's what many scholars told. The second thing is, unfortunately, this discussion for us is now already academic in India. We like it or not, most of the people of India have lost faith in local language mediums. Even the poorest want English medium. So we already lost the debate in my view. We only make a point in order to go to the next corollary of that. But on the fundamental issue, we lost the argument. Therefore, to me, it's no longer important the correct Telugu medium, English medium, or whatever medium. You pretend it's English medium if that's what's popular with the parents. I have no problem. But in the first few years, teach them only in the local language, add English as a language. For the next few years, until let's say 7th or 8th grade, make it bilingual. You have English books and whatever, but teach them in the local language and English, but basically make them proficient in both and ensure that the concepts are understood. And maybe after 8th grade or so, 9th grade onwards, maybe high school level, make it substantially English medium if that's what the society wants. It's not a perfect model, because there is no perfect answer to the problem. Only South Asia has this unique set of problems. The rest of the world doesn't have these problems. And we cannot overcome it overnight by a doctrinary solution. Therefore, my approach would be, have a pragmatic arrangement and focus on the kids' ability to grasp the concepts and apply them. It doesn't matter what language it is. If you want to call it English medium, call it English medium. Because we all know that in most English medium schools, the non-English knowing teacher is teaching non-English knowing kids in English. So what you call it is to be irrelevant. If the concepts are transferred, knowledge is efficiently transferred, I am quite content.
That's one.
It's not a perfect answer, yes, as I said, but I don't know if there's a better answer at this point.
Yes, certainly we agree with you. In fact, from mother tongue to the other tongue, the transition has to be very smooth, number one. And as you said, multilingualism helps in development of new neural connections and makes children cognitively very efficient. So that way, knowing more languages is always an advantage. And thank you very much, sir. We'll have now the final question because of the paucity of time. And before giving it to Professor Sridhar Srivastava for final observations. Yes.
Good afternoon, sir. I am Kajal from 4th year MSc at Physics. Sir, recently I saw an advertisement in that a small school girl, she was from government school. So she was seeing from one window that a student of private school, the school has come to her home through Google Meet or Microsoft Team, like these apps. But I would like to know what could be the government initiative to bring the school to the students who are studying in government schools.
Great question. That's the digital divide I'm talking about. And I believe in an infrastructural sense, more than the buildings today, that anyway is happening, we have money for Matchmaking Shiksha Abhiyan, Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, all kinds of things are happening. But the central challenge in the coming years, particularly in the post-COVID world, is bridging the digital divide. But I think we have tools. A, technology. Most of India is now networked. There is digital infrastructure available to not all of India, but most of India. B, the cost is plummeting. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, Google and I think Reliance or some other company have come up with a program whereby tablets can be made available to every single kid at a very, very low cost. I think they talked about 1,000 or 2,000 rupees, definitely below 3,000 rupees. Very low cost. 3, enough resources are available. You take, for instance, now Andhra Pradesh, Telangana. I'm giving an example of AP Telangana because I understand it's better. And ultimately, education is a state-specific thing. Therefore, numbers they're valid only when you talk about the state, that is Tamil Nadu or Karnataka, Kerala, Andhra Pradesh, or Telangana. Talking all India is really not relevant because it doesn't give you a sense of what is happening. As I said, 85,000 rupees is spent. Now, without doing anything dramatic, by simply restructuring this expenditure, supposing there are 66 lakh kids in government schools in Andhra Pradesh. There are actually, in Telangana. Suppose it costs 3,000 rupees per tablet. Actually, you don't require it, but I'll come to that later. All that you require is about 2,000 crores rupees. When you are spending 55,000 crores per year in a program spread over 2 or 3 years to find 2 or 3,000 or 4,000 or 5,000 crores for improving the digital infrastructure for the kids is absolutely a child's thing. We are only imagining that there is a problem. It's a problem which is easily solvable. Finally, we have institutional mechanisms already contemplated. The cluster system is a very sound system in my view. One, instead of each school being disaggregated and separate, we are now looking at the whole educational edifice in a defined geographic population from preschool to class 12 as one, which is I think a very sound. Two, you are making the senior-most institution there overall monitor of the whole system so that they ensure effective administrative and academic coordination, etc. And three, the infrastructure, particularly digital infrastructure, if it's not available in every school, it's easy to transfer that infrastructure and make available to the local schools if you have adequate number of instruments, etc. available in that cluster. It's also important to transfer, to make available adequate number of vocational education teachers. When you have small schools in India, about 60-70% of schools in India have fewer than 30-40 children, there is no way you can have in each school a number of vocational teachers. It's absurd notion. But a cluster could have X number of vocational teachers, they can be shared. Their time can be shared. So, in many ways, cluster idea is a very strong one. For digital technology to be transferred, cluster idea is a very efficient instrument. So, by using all these, our technological advantage today, digital infrastructure already available, by putting some money to make available to the schools as well as to the kids, the hardware, and utilizing the new institutional arrangements that are contemplated in the clusters, I think within 3 years' time, if the government now means business, without significantly increasing the allocation of money, I'm always fond of minimizing expenditure, otherwise things will never happen. We can radically transform it. In 3 years' time, the goal of India should be 90% of kids must be having digital access to it. I believe it's an achievable goal. I think NCRT and all of us must fight for that and make it part of the thinking of the decision makers in the country.
Thank you, sir, for saying that, it's not only the spending, but spending wisely, which is important, especially in the area of education, and also talking about alternative models of cost-benefit analysis, etc. Thank you very much. Now I pass it on to Dr. Paramita.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable insights on this most relevant topic of the day in the field of education. Thank you very much. I now invite our Honorable Director of NCERT, Professor Sridhar Srivastava, to deliver the chairperson's remarks. Over to you, sir, Professor Srivastava.
Very good morning to you all. Namaskar. It was my proud privilege to have been given this chance to listen to this S.M. Anikar Memorial Lecture by Dr. Jayaprakash Narayanji on this occasion of 59th Foundation Day of RIE. So, a very proud constituent of NCERT, the largest, I would say, the apex body advising and assisting central as well as state government system of education. And it was really delight to hear to listen to Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan sir on this occasion. And most interesting was the questions which were put by the students. And it is a very opportune time for students also, because we are at a junction where we have as the National Education Policy 2020, and we all know that India as a country is termed as having population dynamics in a favor, but we all know if the education is not imparted in the right manner, so we will not be able to realize the fruit of that population dynamics. So, sir, I would just like to inform that your concern of the learning outcome not mentioned in the RTE Act, I would just like to inform you that in the year 2016-17, NCERT embarked upon a great exercise where we came out with learning outcome for classes 1 to 8, and that was notified in the month of February 2017 in RTE Act. Here, by learning outcome, we mean that it is a statement for each grade level, the domain or the area in which the child is undergoing teaching learning process. So what will be the core, and the child after the completion of that process would be able to have that outcome with him or her. So at the later when Dr. Srikanth was mentioning about the national level achievement, the national level achievement survey was implemented in November 2017, where the questions were aligned to that learning outcome, and it gave a very interesting picture of the whole country, where the estimates of learning level were provided at district level, and that where those reports were shared by each and every elected representative. I mean to say the member of parliament and member of Rajya Sabha, member of parliament Rajya Sabha and Lok Sabha by the then education minister. Having said so, the main point that I want to make here that now in the country we have made a stride towards understanding that exactly what education means, and also that education without skill or competency has no use. Here it is very interesting to listen from you, sir, that in a question when you responded that all these students should be going through those 66 pages, and that includes the higher education also, but at least the 30-35 pages that belongs to school education, or it may be a little less than that, they should go through. And I tell you, the audience here and mainly the students whom I am addressing, because we somehow get occasion to know and discuss about these things at many forums. But my dear students, I would just tell to you that I am really very happy that the kind of questions you posed. One question came about the mother tongue, and as the speaker was mentioning about the PISA test, and you all know that the PISA 2009 plus that was there, and we were about we were 72nd in that league too. Most interestingly, one information that came to me very recently, I would like to share with you. We have been requested by the government of Vietnam, through our representative, Indian ambassador or the High Commission as the official that says there. Through him, we were requested that we need to teach their teachers belonging to one gifted children's school in the language English. And we were also requested to teach their children in English language. And when the discussion was going on, I was really surprised to know that Vietnam is very high in the league table. What I am trying to say, that Vietnam is looking towards us for English language teaching. Vietnam is faring so high in the PISA scores, and where are we? I'm trying to just answer the question that one of the student, fourth year asked, that what is this issue of mother tongue? You see, this is very simple. English as a language, as a tool, as a second language of proficiency, there is no issue. As a tool, there is no issue. But teaching learning in mother tongue is very important for the reason that language is not only a matter of medium of instruction or medium of communication. It carries culture or other sound practices which are described, which are given there in that language, and that is the treasure of this country. And multilingualism, what Professor Srikanth was mentioning, that it improves the cognitive neurons and all, that is very important, but we should not be bothered about that whether I am not being taught or I am not in getting any opportunity in English medium. I give you an example. There are issues when students coming out from IIT Mumbai integrated course. This I am saying that on the basis of my confirmed interaction with the students and all. They are joining multinational company, and then again they are being put to a foundational course in communication skills. So this 21st century skills, what we talk about, these are independent of the kind of medium of instruction we are getting opportunity to study. And as Dr. Jayaprakash Naranji was mentioning, the kind of teaching learning environment we had. I had the privilege of studying in my own mother tongue school, in government school. So yes, it is very important what the speaker mentioned. It is not a matter of infrastructure, or it is not a matter of only talking about the quality in the sense of infrastructure. It is a matter of how we are imparting our education. And the kind of indicators that he was mentioning, it is very important for our students to think about that, to contemplate about that. If you know the PGI score that the government has now come out with, and it has linked it, the PGI score for funding also to states. There, the Sikkim state is coming below the national average. But if you see otherwise in the Sikkim state is having 1 to 14 or 13 teacher-student ratio. Sikkim state will come very high on other indicators that the erstwhile Samagra Shiksha was having as an indicator for measuring the implementation of the scheme. So, my dear friends, it is a very great opportunity for you all, and my faculty here who are connected on this occasion, they have to be just arranging such for the future occasions of interaction with the speakers and with students. That would be very great opportunity. And second point that I want to make, that after the National Education Policy 2020, we have to think about the way forward. And for that, I want to make that paragraph number 4.9 and 4.23. That is a great opportunity for this big populous country and the young mind and the young children to relish the fruit of the future, where it says that children should have flexibility in the choice of subjects, and the children should, what is the core essential and what is the core skill that children should possess with them. So kindly read those chapters and discuss about that, and also suggest us. And I would request Principal RIE Mysuru to kindly hold a discussion with the students, as you all know that we are in the process of enacting National Curriculum Framework. So there is a good cohort of young minds that is before us. We should also interact with them, and if they have studied, if they have gone through those pages of the National Education Policy, they will surely come forward with some very good, fertile, critical views of them. So these are the points that I wanted to make, as we have paucity of time and we have to go for another meeting also. Somebody is visiting our institution, and with all this, I again just place forth my great happiness for getting this chance of listening to Dr. Jayaprakash Naranji, and I wish all the future success of our endeavors at NCRT level, at RIE Mysuru level, for taking all our efforts to see the fruits of NEP 2020 policy realized in coming years and decades. With all these words, namaskar and thank you.
I thank you, sir, for being with us this morning and telling us your observations on this talk and the interactions with the students. Thank you very much. I now request our principal, sir, to kindly felicitate the Dean and the heads of departments, of the various departments. Professor G.V. Gopal, Dean of Instructions, RIE Mysuru. I next call upon Professor S. Rama, Head, Department of Education. Madam.
I wish happy RIE Mysuru. I was there as a party in 25th year and also 50th year, and hope for that great success in the future also.
Professor C. Padmaja, Head, Department of Extension Education, RIE Mysuru. Professor V. S. Prasad, Head, Department of Mathematics and Sciences. Dr. V. Prasad, Head, Department of Education in Social Science and Humanities.
In fact, it would be no surprise as to why the people are being felicitated. I must tell you that, including two heads, rather three heads, third head, the dean will have some more time. At least three people will not be officially here, including me, for the next foundation day, Professor Padmaja, Professor Rama, and myself. So this is a very great occasion to honor them for their services. That's number one. And secondly, in fact, if you see Professor Rama and her mother, they were affected with COVID, but fortunately with God's grace they have recovered without any issue. That's really a great moment. And in spite of all the issues, these are the people who have been rendering their services with utmost dedication. Professor Gopal, in spite of having comorbidity, and also Professor V.S. Prasad, they've been doing such a service to the institution. I think the words fall short for me, to explain. And also Dr. V. Prasad, who has been given additional charge, he would never bother whether this is a befitting task in terms of his age, abilities, and or not. So he would any task you give, he would do it so effortlessly, including the translation of materials, doing the work of Mr. Gulab Singh as in charge and farm superintendent. So I think this is the dedication which this institution requires in order to survive and prosper. I thank you all, and there are many more who have done the service to the institution, but it is only a few who have done their services that they have rendered to this institution. They are being acknowledged because, the world is so big and we are so small. Thank you.
You needed felicitation,
Thank you.
sir. Anyway, that I thank you. Without the great leadership of our principal, we could not do much that we would have also been felicitated.
Thank you, sir. We have almost come to the end of the program. I request Professor C. Padmaja, Head DEE, to propose the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Parmita. Warm good afternoon to all present, offline and online, on this special day of RIE 59th Foundation Day. On behalf of Director NCRT, Principal, RIE Mysuru, staff and students, I thank Dr. Jayaprakash Narayan, IAS, for obliging our invitation and delivering Sardar Panikar lecture on education for social transformation. Sir, your words of wisdom will help us to be inspired and move forward with enthusiasm and great zeal for fulfilling the NEP 2020. I thank Professor Sridhar Srivastava, Director NCRT, Chairman of today's celebration, for his support and presence in spite of his busy schedule. I thank Principal RIE Mysuru for his ever inspiring presence and guidance. I thank Professor G.V. Gopal, Dean of Instruction, HODs, conveners of various committees, and the members of the committees, especially Banner Committee, Refreshment Committee, Mementos Committee, Audio-Visual Committees, for their support to make this program a success. I also extend our special thanks to AV Studio team, especially Mr. Harsha, for organizing the infrastructure for video recording the whole program. Last but not least, the choir group and other student volunteers who have helped us to organize this program. I extend special thanks to Dr. Parmita Sastri from English Department for comparing this program. Final word of thanks to all my colleagues, both teaching and non-teaching staff of RIE Mysuru, and also those who are present online and offline, for attending this program and making it a grand success. Before I close, I make this announcement that refreshments for the students will be served on stage, and for the staff it will be in near the principal's office. May I now request all the audience to stand to raise for donational act.
जन गण मन अधिनायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता पंजाब सिंध गुजरात मराठा द्राविड़ उत्कल बंगा विंध्य हिमाचल यमुना गंगा उच्छल जलधि तरंगा तब शुभ नामे जागे तब शुभ आशीष मांगे गाहे तब जय गाथा जन गण मंगलदायक जय हे भारत भाग्य विधाता जय हे